welcome. My name is Ray Burkhardt. I'm the Master of Ceremonies. As many of you probably were at this dinner in previous years and saw me in this role. It's a lifetime role, I understand. So, so I hope to be doing it for a long time, more. So, great to have everybody here. We have some very, as always, very distinguished and exciting awardees and guests, and it should be a great evening. At this moment, as a first action of the Master of Ceremonies, I'm going to invite in the presentation of the flag ceremony, the young people who are participating in the Project Bridge Youth Ambassadors Program. And let me just say a word about that program. It's run now in its 27th year, and it brings high school students from Los Angeles and from New York, and this year we're adding some from Montana also. And so I knew it was a state that began with M, so yeah. And it's so it's a wonderful program. They go to Korea for two weeks, but before that, they have a very in-depth study program here, all about Korea, about intercultural relations. The whole thing started after the '92 riots here in Los Angeles. And so these are the young people who are preparing to go to Korea in this program. And now they're right out that door, and I think they can hear me, so I'm going to ask them to please come in.
who dwell there may benefit from a world in which they are resilient, educated, and empowered. Bless those who study the wonder manifest in the dynamic structure of metals, so these persons may continue to guide us to a common home, a world marked by sustainability, security, and common well-being. Bless each of us here present and bless world leaders so that all may strive to a world without military or medical fear. Help us to find a world where we have forgotten DMZ and speak with joy about a peninsula of lasting peace. Bless this food for us. Bless us to the service of those in need. Care for those who are overlooked. We ask compassionate heaven to help us today, each day, and forever.
Thank you very much, Father. And now Kathy Stevens, our chairman.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Father, for that really lovely and moving invocation. I want to welcome everyone to the 2020 Pacific Century Institute Annual Awards Dinner. It's great to see so many familiar friends, faces here, as well as new faces. I think as we gather this February, it's always a great time to come to Los Angeles. I know some of you are lucky enough to live here. But for the rest of us, February seems like a lovely time to be here. Some of you who've been at previous dinners probably recall I'm a big film buff. I'm even a Korean film buff. But I always kind of mark, it seems like usually we have these dinners right before the Academy Awards. And I know in past years I said, this is a much better awards dinner than the Oscars, right? And that's still true. We have great awardees tonight. But one thing I do want to celebrate tonight, because I think we do have cause today for both celebration and concern and focus. But one cause for celebration is the recognition of Bong Joon-ho, the Korean filmmaker, his brilliant movie, Parasite. Not just my Korean roots here, but the first film not in English to win a Best Picture Oscar, and 3 more to boot. Pretty amazing. So really, congratulations to all, and somehow I think it actually, and he was so generous in saying how many people he appreciated in the Los Angeles film industry and his influence in the world. Is this on? I've lost it. That I feel we can all share in this and think this is a great example of building bridges, but building bridges which need to be used because there's a lot of shared problems that we still have to solve. But of course, we also know as we gather tonight that 2020 has brought with it many challenges, including addressing and controlling the spread of the coronavirus in the Asia Pacific and beyond. Added to that, of course, are the strains of political polarization in countries across the region, including the United States and many others in Asia, continued trade and security tensions, and although I like to think of as opportunities as well as challenges, upcoming elections in the United States, in South Korea, we just had some in Taiwan, and many, many other places. So I say all that, not to give a big speech, but to say as we gather tonight, our mission of building bridges, even for those of us who don't know anything about engineering, but building bridges across the Pacific is more essential than ever. And I think that PCI is onto something with its Youth Ambassadors program. We're so glad they're here tonight, both this year's class as well as previous alumni of it, now going on, as Ray pointed out, for 27 years. So please talk to some of these Youth Ambassadors, past and present tonight, and commit with us to continuing to support these young leaders as they move forward in their lives and careers. We're going to have a full introduction to our honorees tonight after dinner. I'm just standing between you and your salad, but please go ahead and eat it. We do have here we are in Southern California. We have a little bit of a Northern California theme going on here. We're delighted to welcome, and I personally am delighted to welcome someone I learned so much from during my short time at Stanford, Dr. Siegfried Hecker, here with his wife Nina tonight to receive the 2020 Building Bridges Individual Award. Again, you'll hear more, but I have to say, he's intimidating. He's a nuclear scientist. He directed the Los Alamos lab. He knows about things I never understood, but he has an ability to communicate about it with anybody, as we saw tonight, with those of us sitting in a room with the youth ambassadors, to talk about how these issues of nuclear proliferation, of security issues, what we have to understand about them. But most importantly, fundamentally, and how relationships are at the heart of it. You need to know a little science. It's nice to learn some science from somebody who really knows it, but it's about relationships. And in addition to his extraordinary scientific career, no one that I've met in my long diplomatic career has been better at building relationships than Sig Hecker. We're also honoring tonight the Asia Foundation for its extraordinary work over 60-plus years throughout Asia. It's based in San Francisco. It has offices in, I believe, 18 countries in East Asia, a very deep relationship with the Republic of Korea, and continued work throughout Asia. And we're really pleased tonight to have David Arnold, the president of the Asia Foundation, Sherry, his wife, here, along with senior staff members from the Asia Foundation. So please engage with them, learn more about the work of the Asia Foundation. Full disclosure, I'm on the board of trustees of the Asia Foundation, but I'm on it like many retired diplomats because I've seen what it's done over the years, over the past half century plus, in Asia, to build good governance, to build resilient environments, to empower women, and a whole lot more. And we're so pleased to partner with the Asia Foundation, not only tonight, but going forward. So thank you again, all. This is actually our 30th anniversary dinner, correct? I'm looking at the founder here, Spencer Kim, to remind me of that, and other founders here. It's a great record for 30 years, Spencer and others who were here at the creation. Thank you for your continued commitment. The work is not done. We have a very consequential and challenging year ahead, and we look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Great summary of our challenges and opportunities ahead, and great introduction to the program this evening. My last pleasure to carry out before leaving everyone to enjoy dinner and then to hear our musical presentations and also the awarding of the awards, is just to thank all the volunteers who spent enormous effort this year, and many of them for many previous years, to bring about this event. It's not easy to bring about. Angie Park, I always get a note every year. It says, "Don't ask people to stand up because they won't do it." But if they would like to stand up, Angie Park, who's puts in, there she is, she's standing up, yes. Thank you. Hans Jung, is Hans here? Where's Hans? Can we get Angie, can you make him stand up too? There he is. Hans, thank you. And many others whose names I don't have, but thank you. And maybe all of you could stand up. All of you, all the volunteers over there, all of you stand up. Stand up, come on. There we go, thank you. And I also always thank in these remarks, as Kathy did, our founder, Spencer Kim. Thank you. I do it because he doesn't like me to do it, but he deserves it. Thank you very much. And now I would like to ask PCI's Vice President, the famous journalist and professor Tom Plate, to come up to the up here in order to introduce the speakers. And then this evening, he will be also playing the role of moderator. Contrary to what is on your program, our other moderator who was going to join us from Korea was unable to come. And so Tom Plate will be providing, in his inimitable style, will be fulfilling this role. So, yeah.
On the occasion of the 30th anniversary of this incredibly relevant Pacific Century Institute, of which I've been a member for maybe 8 or 10 years, listening to this young duo with the marvelous, exquisite piano playing, but the sonorous tone of that cello. If you know it's how hard that is to play. That is a hard instrument to play. And when I was listening to her outside warming up, I had to go up to her and say, in the immortal words of the late legendary Leonard Bernstein, your cello tone is yummy. Wasn't that really something, though? And you know what that takes besides talent, particularly playing that level of music? It takes hard work. You can be talented, but if you don't put in the work, it's not going to happen. And if you look at your list of past winners of the Building Bridges Award and the people that are on it, William Perry, Don Oberdorfer, Chris Hill, Ton New, James Steinberg, some of these have been off-the-record sources of mine over the years, Ban Ki-moon, the great Robert Gallucci. The other thing, too, you have to notice is that when you looked at the impeachment hearings in the House and the effort of the administration to tear down the work of some of our foreign affairs careerists, foreign service careerists, and you saw the quality of their presentation, the precision of their mind, the commitment to public service. Gosh, I wish all of my students at LMU, many of whom are over there, hi there, had been required to watch the hearings just to appreciate what the Foreign Service has done in producing Kathleen Stevens, Ray Burkhart, Bob Gallucci, and there are a number of others in this audience. And so as not to be parochial, I also want to mention Kontati Subramongan, who was the 39th Foreign Minister of Thailand. Khan, would you just wave your hand? He's our guest here tonight and a very good friend of mine. And one of the most highly regarded foreign ministers that's ever represented the government of Thailand. Now, having said that, you may wonder then why I'm here, which is a really good question. The answer is as Ambassador Burkhart hinted at, GA, someone from Korea, Seoul, South Korea, was supposed to be here to moderate, but in an abundance of caution on her part, and I would say in an abundance of class on her part, she decided that with all the uncertainty with the coronavirus and the fact that there were problems in Korea, she was not going to get on an airplane and risk anyone's life, not just her own, but anybody here, by being where I am right now. So I am a last-minute substitute, and I will do the best I can, but I want to say that those of you who know that this lady, she is extremely well known in Korea, and extremely respected in the journalistic community. Instead of my giving a speech, which would bore the living daylights out of you, we've decided to do a panel discussion. As you know, you can hardly turn on a TV news show without a panel discussion. The difference will be that the panelists that we have tonight are winners of the awards that we're giving out this year and are two exceptional talents. They need no introduction, but naturally I'll give them one anyhow. Siegfried Hecker is from Stanford and Professor Emeritus of Research, Senior Fellow Emeritus at the Freeman Spogli Institute. For 1986 to 1997, Dr. Hecker served as the 5th director of the Los Alamos National Laboratory, which you, I'm sure, even my students have heard of, right? Right. He's an internationally recognized expert in plutonium science, global threat reduction, and nuclear security. He does get out of the lab, however, from time to time, and over the last 25 years, he has fostered cooperation with the Russian nuclear labs to secure and safeguard their vast stockpile of ex-Soviet fissile materials. And since 2004, he has made 7 trips to North Korea. I don't know whether he won a prize or lost a prize on that one, but that is not only notable, but in addition, he has visited North Korea's uranium enrichment facility in 1910, which very few people have seen. He's one of the few Westerners who's actually seen the facility. He is, therefore, just your ordinary university professor. Our second awardee and our guest who's going to come up here is David Arnold. He's the 6th president of the Asia Foundation, a highly respected development veteran with years of experience across the Asia Pacific and the Middle East. He leads all aspects of the Asia Foundation, which has its headquarters in San Francisco and an office in Washington, and in 18 different country offices in Asia. It's a famous nonprofit foundation. It does excellent work. It's committed to improving lives across the expanse of a dynamic and developing Asia. He's done so many things that, including serving as president of the American University in Cairo for 7 years. He oversaw the construction of a new state-of-the-art campus, including the region's largest English language library and the first public park in the suburb of New Cairo. He was, he's just, we could go on and on. So it looks like PCI has somehow uncovered another pro-peace underachiever. To that end, I thought I'd invite both of the awardees and guests up here, and we're going to have a relatively brief discussion, because the one thing we do not have in common with the Academy Awards is that we don't go on forever. And we will be out of here at 9 o'clock, or Angie will do something violent against me, so we're going to do that. Could we have Dr. Hecker and David Arnold to come up, please? As you will learn later, I'm a little bit in awe of, can you all hear this? I'm a little bit in awe of not just people who can raise extraordinary amounts of money. Please come to LMU, we could do it. But I'm in awe of physicists, probably beyond what is necessary. But Dr. Hecker is really a great choice, as is David, for the award and your institution, the Asia Foundation, because of its timing. And in terms of timing, we don't have much time. So we'll take 15, 20 minutes, but I think we should start off with, if you don't mind, we'll start off with the North Korean question, all right? And it's very relevant, it's very dear to the hearts of some of us here. You warned last year that, Dr. Hecker, that we were on the precipice of war, you actually welcomed efforts by South Korean President Moon Jae-in and U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korea leader Kim since the beginning of this year to engage in dialogue and summit meetings. And you added, it's worth finding out if North Korean leader Kim is serious about his pledges to complete denuclearization. My question is, was he serious? And were we serious? Is that too easy? Should I make it a harder question?
Let's see, so I often like to...
And try mine, please.
Let's see, is that better? No? Let me try yours and see if you can get this going. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and an honor to be here with you tonight. And typically, since it was said, you know, I'm a nuclear guy, a nuclear scientist. The way that I answer this kind of question is to say, I'm just a nuclear scientist. But let me at least offer. So the issue of anybody being serious about denuclearization of North Korea. So in other words, is Kim Jong-un going to give up his nuclear weapons? And as far as I'm concerned, the answer is, I don't know. And moreover, I don't think he knows either. In other words, it depends. And it depends to a large extent on us here in the United States of America. And so we'd have to be willing to take some risks to create the conditions that would actually make it favorable for him to give up his treasured sword. And for him to recognize that that treasured sword is an unnecessary burden. Now, it takes a lot to be able to do that, but so in my opinion, as I've looked at, and I've been there 7 times, I went there first 16 years ago, as I've looked, you know, I've been inside their nuclear complex, they've shown me around. Of course, the most important thing is also, I came out of the nuclear complex, you know, and I'm here to tell the story. So at any rate, I think it does, as we look back, at least what I've been able to surmise, that both Kim Jong-un, his father and his grandfather, have been willing to explore giving up the nuclear weapons, but have never gone all the way back to actually give them up. And so can we create those conditions? There was a time in 2018 that I was somewhat optimistic. And then unfortunately, particularly since Hanoi, things have gone in the direction where I have less optimism today, but I still say we don't know.
The uncertainty principle again? David, when the late Warren Christopher, who was, as you know, was President Clinton's first term Secretary of State, President Clinton used to ask him every once in a while to give him a list of the 5 most worrisome international tensions in the world. And Chris told me that North Korea was always on that list of the top 5, right? This nation of 23, 24 million, the top 5. From that perspective, what, as you have been all over Asia, your offices over there, totally experienced in Asia, what are the other issues in Asia that they think the United States could be doing more or doing better about? And you have 3 or 4 hours to answer that question. Oh, sorry. We have the one working. Sorry. No more budget.
Well, first of all, let me say on behalf of the Asia Foundation, our staff and our board, how honored we are to be receiving this award, and really to congratulate the Pacific Century Institute and Spencer on 30 years. It's a remarkable achievement, and we had 35 years ahead of you, but we're really delighted to see the Pacific Century Institute thriving and doing the things that it's doing, which are critically important. So the Asia Foundation, as you've acknowledged and mentioned, works across 18 developing countries throughout Asia. I'd like to say to Sig, we don't do nukes, so, I mean, we do a lot of other stuff. And some of the other things that we do deal with some of what I think are the most critical issues confronting Asia as a region. And 5 is a big number, but it's also a small number in terms of the range of issues, and those include the process of rapid, unplanned urban migration and urbanization. Asia has the largest concentration of rapidly developing unplanned settlements, urban settlements, and related to that is the vulnerability of those cities and other parts of Asia to climate change, environmental issues. I don't need to tell this group about issues of air pollution and water issues, so environmental and climate change issues are very close to the top of the list. I think one of the things that we've been working on that is sort of a quiet, unacknowledged aspect of security issues in Asia is the rise of religious and ethnic conflicts, many of which places like Myanmar and Mindanao, parts of southern Thailand, these are long-standing multi-generational conflicts, and they are hugely destructive in terms of human life, but also hugely draining in terms of economic resources. And I think the issue of growing income inequality, and so that's something that we face obviously here in the US, but as Asia has grown and developed so rapidly, the gap between the very wealthy and those at the very bottom of the income ladder are dramatic. And finally, I have to say that one of our major focus areas has been on women's empowerment and the whole issue of gender inequality. And you look at the issue of gender-based violence and the status of women across Asia. It doesn't show up on the front page of the New York Times unless there's a spectacular incident. But I think it is holding Asia back. And I think it's something that if you look at all of the statistics in terms of what Asia could achieve if women were fully part of the economic growth and development of the region, it's a missed opportunity, and it's also hugely important in terms of social equity and justice.
On the women's issue, I think that you really put your finger on something that's terribly important. The Japanese have had to look at that anew. I remember in one of my first interviews with Lee Kuan Yew, the late Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, as traditional Chinese man that he was, he realized when he took over Singapore that they didn't have enough workers. So how could you double the number of adult workers? Well, if you gave women equal opportunity and gave them education and gave them a chance to do it, and they did it. And as you know, the success story of Singapore isn't due to the people who hold up half the sky, which is women. However, if you look at the American cultural commitment to that, I think we're better than a lot of countries. But it's a sort of a little bit left field question. But I want to see how you look at it. But we're trying to get out of Afghanistan, and I think that's I don't blame us for wanting to get out of Afghanistan. But apparently, we're going to get out without trying to consolidate one of the few gains we had, which is revisiting, recalibrating the rights of women in Afghanistan. And in your work, what David first did, how do you look at that, and how tragic do you see that, as I see it being very tragic?
Well, first of all, let me say Afghanistan is the Asia Foundation's largest single country office. We've only been there since 1954. We had a brief interregnum from 79 until 2002, but women's empowerment has been a major focus of the work that we've been doing. We were really privileged this week to have a visit from a woman, a really heroic, courageous Afghan woman named Sakina Yaqubi. And she heads up an organization called the Afghan Institute of Learning. And Sakina started girls' education in a refugee camp in Peshawar during the Russian period, and operated underground during and throughout the Taliban period, educating 3,500 young Afghan women. She's been a longstanding partner of the Asia Foundation. And yes, you're right that the US seems to be at the moment looking for ways to head to the exit door. But I think there is nothing that can take away the investment and the value and the return that can be gained from the incredible change that has taken place in terms of girls' education and this next generation, which is just amazing. We're there for the long haul. We have a long-standing, ongoing commitment to Afghanistan. And you know, as the US and the Taliban reach an agreement, there is a process that will follow, which is an inter-Afghan negotiation and dialogue. And one can only hope that the voices at that table will be diverse and that women will be well represented, and that the gains that Afghan women have made over these past 19 years will be preserved in whatever ultimate political settlement is reached.
This question might strike you as a little weird, but will you feel safe after, the Asia Foundation feel safe in Afghanistan after U.S. has left?
I get there once a year. We have 160 people in Kabul. We are committed. It's a diverse, both Afghan and international staff. We are there for the long term, and I think we adjust our footprint and our presence to deal with the security threats that we deal with in a variety of different contexts. But absolutely, we are not necessarily there only until U.S. forces withdraw. We expect to be there for the long haul for the Afghan people.
Very good. Dr. Hecker, can I call you Siegfried?
Sig.
Sig! Of course. I should have known. Sig. A good friend, Sig. Let me ask you this. How do you see China and its own nuclear posture affecting the North Korean situation, both positively and negatively? As you know, the Chinese government have officially declared a no first use policy. Whether in a real crisis that would play out that way, who knows, but they have that and we don't. They seem to, it seems to me the nuclear part of their militarization seems to be a little less important than ours in the United States. And of course that has implications from Pyongyang's perspective. How do you look at that? That's working?
Yeah, oops. Yes, it does work. First of all, if I may, Tom, let me just say, as I listen to David Arnold and what East Asia Foundation does in Afghanistan, quite frankly, it makes the nukes look easy. But let's see if I sort of get the gist of your question as far as China. So two aspects of China, sort of nuclear issue policy and potential threats to the United States, and then also perhaps China role in North Korea. So on the first one, in terms of China's nuclear program, one thing that we have to recognize in this country It's very small compared to the American nuclear program, and very small compared to the first Soviet and then Russian nuclear program. So the Chinese have a very different attitude of what their nuclear program means, not only to the defense of the country, but to the country as a whole. And so just to give you an example of numbers, once upon a time, the United States had 25,000 nuclear weapons. Remember that one nuclear weapon will ruin the day. It will ruin a city. So 25,000 is a lot. Yeah. So today, we're down in sort of 1,550 strategic weapons, less than 5,000 altogether. That's still a lot of nuclear weapons. We don't know exactly how many the Chinese have, but the best guess is somewhere around 300. And a few dozen that could reach the United States. The Chinese have appeared to be satisfied with that. That gives them what they call sort of an assured second strike capability that would do enough damage to the United States that the United States wouldn't go ahead and do first use on China. And they're right from that standpoint, because the U.S. does have a low threshold of pain, so to speak, and so we're not going to take that chance. So as I look at the Chinese nuclear strategy, it's actually been incredibly clever and effective. So instead of spending, their national budget on nuclear weapons, they spend enough to make sure that they have a deterrent, and then the rest they focused on the economy. And the economy is one heck of a lot more powerful weapon than are the nuclear weapon. You can actually use the economic weapon, but you can't use the nuclear weapons. So they've done that extremely well. However, in this world, nothing is ever fully in a stable condition. As we look at many of the new technologies, there's some conventional technologies that sort of could threaten nuclear stability. The U.S. insistence for several decades to want to build anti-missile shield, anti-ballistic missile defense. That worries the Chinese because then it might make their couple of dozen that can reach the United States impotent, so to speak. So those things are in play, and so things aren't totally stable, but for the most part, the Chinese have done this in a pretty clever fashion to focus on the economy, have enough nuclear. As far as North Korea is concerned, one of the most important sort of myths to dispel is the Chinese have not helped the North Koreans with their nuclear weapons program. There's certainly things that the Chinese have gotten, that the North Koreans have gotten by trade, maybe across the Yalu River or other places, that may have helped to some extent. But the Chinese did neither encourage nor help the North Koreans with the nuclear weapons program. But the Chinese are also not going to be the ones that solve the problem. We've tried that in several U.S. administration, and that's foolish to think that. And so in the end, we need to tackle that issue. China certainly is important in terms of how it deals with North Korea, but China is not going to solve the North Korean nuclear problem.
You okay with that? All right, I think this will be the last question, and it's ridiculous in the fact that it's not answerable, but it'll give you something to think about, perhaps. We're talking about bridge building bridges. You're winning awards for that. It's a great concept, great concept. Three kinds of bridges. There's the bridge where you have a toll booth in the middle, and it's very expensive to go across it. And then you have a bridge which is completely closed off to certain ethnicities, certain kinds of people. And then you have a bridge that is wide open, and people go back and forth. And that emphasizes the fact that we are a smaller world. We require cooperation. We require internationalization. And if you want to not do that, you might as well be North Korea, which has not been a spectacular success in many ways. So therefore, my question to you is, if and when, and I'm going to say when, we get out of the current coronavirus mess, and we will, looking 10 years down the road, I'll start with you, David, Asia and the United States, will that frightening experience, we always used to say, international relations theorists would say, if only the Martians would try and invade, we'd get a much higher level of world government. But will that experience in any way you think bring us closer together? Or is it going to be a stain that we'll never recover from? We're going to be blaming the Chinese all the time for this and boycotting Wuhan? Or are we going to take a view that it could have happened anywhere?
So, I was going to say, Tom, that's a tough question. Let's have David go first.
I think Sig should. I think Sig should sort out North Korea first.
We need more sanctions.
So I guess the advantage of being the president of a 66-year-old organization is that we tend to take a long view. This is an organization, ours, the Asia Foundation, that sent about 2,500 young students, scholars, journalists from Japan to the US after World War II, sent thousands of young Koreans to the US to study, to learn, to experience different aspects of their professional interests here after the Korean War. Today we are bringing development fellows, 12 outstanding young leaders from across Asia every year to look at development issues in Asia, bring them to the US. We're doing a Young Asian Diplomats Leadership Program. We've been sending books to Asia through our Books for Asia program since the 1950s, millions of books over the years. So to be in the business that I'm in, you have to be an optimist. And I am an optimist, and my colleagues across Asia are optimists because I think the future, if you meet with the young bridge builders and the young ambassadors that Sig and I had a chance to meet earlier today, if you meet with their counterparts from Asia, including in Korea, the hopes and dreams, the talent, the creativity, the passion is amazing, it's impressive. And we're in the fortunate position as an organization to be able to invest in those dreams, to support their aspirations, to nurture their skills and their knowledge and their networks, and encourage them to really make the kind of commitment that I think is needed to build the kind of bright future that all of us see as possible, not just across the Asia-Pacific region, but the wider Indo-Pacific region that we're trying to reach today. So yes, I'm hopeful. Yes, I'm optimistic. No, I don't think trade wars are going to get in the middle of this. I think this is the Asian century, and America is very much a part of it and needs to be a part of it. And organizations like PCI and the Asia Foundation and the work that Sig and his colleagues at Stanford are doing are all very much an important part of that. So thanks.
I think we should give a round of applause to our experts and our awardees. I got something to say?
You almost got away, but I do want to answer this one because, quite frankly, I've thought about this in the spirit of trying to justify to myself, why am I getting a bridge building award? And my immediate thought was, well, in today's world, we should honor people and organizations that build bridges instead of burn bridges.
There you go.
You know, as we look around the world today and we look around at many of our politicians, and what's being done is the bridges are being burned, and that means you can't get to the other side. But the part that I really wanted to answer in thinking about this is I'm a nuclear guy.
You've said
You,
that,
you know,
yes.
do nuclear people build bridges or do they destroy bridges? And I maintain, at least for a good half of my professional life, I think I have been building bridges. And the reason for that is the following. Just a little bit of the tutorial on things nuclear. It turns out nuclear energy means you split the nucleus, so you split the atom. And that is totally different than the kind of energy you get from everything else, burning coal, oil, you know, and everything else. It's not only different, but it's 1,000,000 times more powerful. And so that means that nuclear energy has such immense power that it can, on one hand, electrify the world. On the other hand, it can destroy the world. And so the reason that nuclear guys like me try to build bridges is we'd like to make sure that we know you have to cooperate with the other side, with the other nuclear folks, in order to get the best out of the atom to electrify for medical treatments, whatever. You need to cooperate. And you also need to cooperate so you don't destroy the world. So if you want nuclear safety, if you want nuclear security, if you don't want nuclear proliferation, you have to work together. And you're only as good as the weakest link in that chain. And so I realized that reasonably late in my life. So that's what I've been doing. And so I've been in North Korea 7 times. It turns out I've been in Russia 57 times. And I've been in China 39 times. And India, Pakistan also, and the others. So that's precisely, so the nuclear guys, because that immense power of splitting the atom, you have to work together, and working together means building bridges. And that's what Spencer Kim and the PCI has done so well.
That's beautifully put, isn't it? If we had more time tonight, I would ask these two distinguished minds to give their opinion and perspective on the nuclear family, but we don't have that much time, so we have to give out the award. Ray, are you up to give out it? Give out the awards, okay.
Very seriously. Thank you very much. Yeah. To the Asia Foundation, to David. Thank you. Is there a reason? Oh, yes. There's a special extra, there's an extra Asia Foundation award. And it's for David Steinberg. And whom all of us, many of us up here, many of us have known for many years. I remember hearing him lecture us about Korea when I was getting ready to go to Korea as the minister in the embassy in 1990. And David was not able to be with us here this evening, but
I get to accept it for him.
Kathy is going to
I'm
take,
having lunch with him next week.
and Kathy's
so
going to
he's
take him the award,
Yeah.
the award to him in Washington, D.C. Yeah, we should have, let's have a picture, all of us up here? Is that a picture? Sure. Yeah, how about that? And now Tom Clayton will wrap it all up.
I wanted to mention a few things. This will take about 10 minutes, and then we're done. Okay? And I'll see you, no, not in this classroom. And we'll see you all at the bar later, I hope. But I do, in closing, I want to acknowledge, if you don't mind, the tremendous staff work that Angie Pack does, if she's here. I know someone has already said that, but I want to say it again. And also, over in the far table are some students from Loyola Marymount University who are not either on the staff of Asia Media, or they have also helped Angie in this event, which has a million moving parts, as you can imagine. Would you guys just stand up just for a minute? Huh? It is such an honor to be associated with young people who have a sense that they can do something with the opportunities they're presented with. I also want to acknowledge that Peter Y.S. Kim will be the 2020 PCI Award dinner chairman. Where is Peter? There he is, ladies and gentlemen. Please put your orders in for vegan dishes and whatever else might be required in advance. I just want to make three quick points. The first is one of my favorite professors, very influential, was someone who won a 2001 bridge building award, Robert Scalapino. Those of you who were here last year will have a vague memory of this story, but every time I tell it, it gets a little different, and it gets a little better, or something, because Bob is no longer with us, and he can't rain down and say, no, I didn't quite say it that way. But as I remember him saying it, it's really a great story. And Bob was, an expert on Korea. And it seems so appropriate for PCI to have the story before you. And the story basically goes like this. God is up there, and he's really very bored. He knows everything. He's got tenure for life. He's not going to transfer anywhere. And he's with these angels who behave perfectly. And he has these committee meetings, which really are boring because he knows how they're going to come out, because he's God. He knows everything. And so finally he says, I got to break out of this. So he gets a hold of Michael, and he says, Michael, I'm losing touch on this bureaucracy and all these layers and everything. I'm losing touch. Find for me the most beautiful soul that left Earth and came to heaven yesterday. And I want to talk with that person, and I want to find out what it's really like back down there on planet Earth. Michael thinks, God's going a little, but you don't argue with God. That's what God wants. He says, yes. He goes, and he comes up a few hours later. He says, God, I have something to tell you. It's a little complicated because actually it's a tie. Two souls are absolutely tied in purity. And there's another coincidence. One is a lady from North Korea, and the other is a lady from South Korea. What do you want to do, the North or the South? So God says, well, I have an eternity of time. Bring them both up. And I'll talk to them and tell them they can ask me any question they want. So the two souls come up before God, and they're shaking and they're trembling. This is God. And Michael has reminded them, you can ask any question you want. And the two ladies say, is that right, God? Yes, God says, any question you want, I'll give you the answer, because I'm God, I know everything. So one woman, they confer and they huddle and they say, well, God, we have the same question. What is it? When will North and South Korea be reunited? God thinks for a minute and he says, oh, that's a tough one. Not in my lifetime. Speaking of God, and with the famous physicist Sig, my good friend Sig, here, who did a great job, as did David. Einstein, who was also a well-known physicist, famously once remarked, concerned at the issues of quantum mechanics' reliance on probability, said famously, as Sig knows, God does not play dice. Famous line attributed to Einstein. Less well known is Niels Bohr's rejoinder. Einstein stopped telling God what to do. So it is worth, however, noting that Einstein also said, and he did not believe in God, but he said this, which I think is very relevant to us today as we're going through a lot of tumult. The most beautiful emotion we can experience is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion that stands at the cradle of all true art and science. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead, a snuffed out candle. So with that, in terms of the mysterious, of something that's very hard to explain or understand, I would offer you the idea that of the 30 years war that the Pacific Century has been waging on behalf of building bridges between America and Asia. It started 30 years ago. 3 decades later, it's still orbiting. I would call that a bit mysterious, and I do stand a bit wrapped in awe. Thank you very much and good night.